Wampanoag way. Meet Tashima and Storum. They're sisters. They're members of the Wampanoag tribe. The girls live typical lives in Massachusetts. They go to school. They ride bikes. They hang out and have fun. But sometimes they get to do something very special. They show others what life was like for their people 400 years ago. That's what some members of the tribe do at the Wampanoag home site. Let's go for a visit. We'll step back in time as the girls show us what life was like for the Wampanoag people in the 1620s. The Wampanoag have been living in the Northeast for thousands of years. They were the group of people that the Pilgrims met when they first arrived in America in 1620. Here we are at the home site. The sun rises. It's time to wake up. The family is cozy in their weetu. A weetu is a Wampanoag home made of branches and tree bark. It's a warm, clear day. The girls go outside and have some breakfast. Their sister cooks it over an open fire. They eat nasam, which is hot corn porridge. They sweeten their nasam with berries. They're a little thirsty. Time to get a drink. A spring runs through the home site. The girls dip hollowed-out gourds into the water and fill them up. The water is cool and fresh. Parents encourage kids to run around, play, and have fun. The girls love to play a game called double ball. Nice catch! Kids also help the adults out with chores. The Wampanoag grow corn. Big flocks of blackbirds want to eat the corn. The girls climb up high and yell and shout at the blackbirds. They're like human scarecrows. They scare those hungry birds away. Time for a break. The girls pick some sumac berries with their dad. Then they brew them into a delicious hot tea. One more cup, please. The Wampanoag live by a river. The girls take a ride on a mashoon to visit friends up the river. Mashoon is the Wampanoag word for boat. It's made from a tree trunk. Back at the home site, the girls grind some corn for stew. Each girl gets a turn. It's a chore, but it's also pretty fun. Their mom cooks quail over the fire. She'll put it into the stew. Looks scrumptious. The girls relax by making some beads out of clay. They'll make them into necklaces. Storm shapes one of her beads into a spiral. It's been a long, busy day. The girls are getting tired and the sun is going down. They play with dolls before bedtime. And then they cuddle up and go to sleep. Their bear fur blankets are so warm and soft. Good night, girls. Tashima and Storm love showing what life was like for the Wampanoag long ago. But they also love being typical modern-day kids.
When you open that and you click on Add Response, it's going to bring you up to that first link, which opens you up to the article that we read yesterday. That article also has those videos. We just watched that together. So you can go ahead and skip over slide 1 and go to slide 2, the Wampanoag Life. Wampanoag Life. All right. So we're focusing on the part of their life that was about 400 years ago. So it did share with us that these girls helped to display or reenact how life was 400 years ago. So that's what they've taught us about. We're going to focus on what we saw when they were dressed in their traditional Native American clothing and in their traditional Native American setting. That's what we're going to focus on today. Yes, it said the girls go to school today. Yes, they play on swings, but that's not what life was like for the Wampanoag 400 years ago, which is what we're focusing on. So let's go ahead and get a text box together, and we're going to type, first of all, about their clothes. One thing that we saw was that their clothing was made from animal skin. So their clothing was made from animal skin. I'm going to make that a little bit smaller so that it can fit underneath my list here. Clothing was made from animal skin. Let's type that in. Another thing that we can notice about the Wampanoag tribe's clothing from this video was that it was typically very functional for work. So their limbs were exposed so that they could move easily and use their hands and arms. Their legs were also exposed so that they could move through uneven terrain, such as forest or rocky fields. So it was very easy to move around in. So easy to move in. Wasn't a lot of tight fitting clothing that was very restricting. There wasn't a lot of clothing that made it difficult to lift up your arms or to run fast and move your legs. So their clothes were easy to move in. Did anyone else notice something about their clothing that they would like to add or that they feel is important? Anyone else notice something that they feel was important? Go ahead and unmute, Levin. You can't? There you
go. They had patterns.
They had what?
Patterns.
Patterns?
Yeah.
Yeah, so their clothing and their jewelry that they would make did have some patterns inside of it. So patterns and decoration. Yeah, so we noticed some frilling on shoulders. We noticed when they were making their beads that they came in a spiral pattern sometimes. So there were some patterns and decorations as well. Great. What about chores? What are some things that you heard that they had to do in order to keep life going on? William?
From eating up the planted, and they had like we're eating crops, and then they had to grind the corn for dinner.
Yeah, lots of preparing for meals. There wasn't a pantry they could go to get a snack out. There wasn't a restaurant they could go to pick up some food. So they had to prepare meals a lot. So prepare meals. And William gave us some great examples of grinding corn. We saw that they had to grind corn down into the powder. They had to go get the berries that they wanted for their tea. So they had to prepare meals a lot. One thing that we call that is gathering. So hunting is when you traditionally go out and are to kill something that you would like to eat. Gathering is where you go out and find something that does not have a living aspect in terms of a soul to it, and you collect it. So like the berries, they were collecting the berries. They were gathering the corn as well. Great. Other chores, Terrence.
That they were picking blueberries to make a soup.
Yeah, so we can put that in gathering. So maybe we can be more specific with corn and berries. We can add that in there so that we have a specific example of some things they were gathering. Yep, definitely. Aiden G.
So a chore was that they had to shoot the birds so they can get the corn.
Yeah, they had to scare away the birds. There weren't scarecrows invented yet, so they had to be the ones to say, go away. Go, leave. So yeah, they had to scare away the birds. Let's add a little bit more detail from there. From crops. So they had to scare away the birds from the crops. Yep. This wasn't necessarily said in the video, but it's definitely something that we can observe. How do you think their houses got there? Said their houses were made out of branches and twigs and some rope that they made out of vines. How do you think those houses got there? Terrence?
They made it by cedar bark,
Yeah.
wood.
So they made it out of wood. So they had to make their houses. So do you think that that would be quite a chore, having to make the place that you would live and build different structures? Definitely. So building houses and other buildings. Yeah. So anything that they wanted to have as a shelter, the Wampanoag created themselves. So that's definitely a chore as well. Building houses and other buildings. Awesome. Anton, I think it's going to be pretty hard to type with 2 cans in your hand, right? Terrence?
The house, what they had, the house was big.
It was big. So I bet that took a lot of work, a lot of time. It was pretty impressive to see what they could make, isn't it? I would have to do a lot of learning before I could do that for sure. So looking at their homes, Terrence has kind of already given us a little bit of information about their homes. One of the things that we saw from their homes is that they were made from tree bark. Made from tree bark and vines. So they kind of used vines as a rope to hold everything together. So the homes were made from tree bark and vines. What did you guys notice about inside of the home? Did people have their own rooms? Was there a kitchen to go to? Was there a bathroom that was separated? What did you notice, Levin?
That they had blankets and fires in there.
They did. So those blankets were inside of that room. And then when they walked right over here, there was a fire in that room. I saw the dad on his bed over off to this side. So it was all like one big room. So the blankets were in one room. The fire was in one room. The kids were in one room. The adults were in one room. There weren't separate bedrooms.
It's kind of like a longhouse, but smaller.
It was like a longhouse. Yeah. Some of our northern woodland tribes had those houses that used trees to make very, very, very long houses that were still one room. And the same thing with the Wampanoag's Weetu. It was called a Weetu. So the Weetu was one big room. Man, I can't type today. There we go. The Weetu was one big room. So you slept in the same place as the adults if you were a kid. You woke up and had your breakfast in the same spot as everybody else. There wasn't a lot of separation. Families spent a lot of time together within one location inside of those Weetus. What about this do for fun? What are some things that these tribes did for fun, for some relaxation? What did we see or hear? Terrence?
They played the game where they had a stick and there was two big bean bags filled with stuff, and they had to catch it on the thing.
So that was called double ball. So they played double ball with sticks. So they had to create their own games as well. There wasn't a store where they could go to buy their toys or to go on the internet and look up a game they could play. They had to create all of this and be inventive. So yeah, double ball is what that game was called that Terrence was describing. Yep. Leah.
They like to play with dolls before they go to bed.
They did. They played with dolls as well. So dolls are actually one of the oldest toys that kids have played with for hundreds and hundreds of years. They weren't always made out of cotton or plastic like what we might see today, but the concept of having something smaller that you take care of that was yours has been a toy that's been around for quite some time. Did anybody else see other things that these children in the Wampanoag tribe did for fun? I know I saw the girls running and chasing each other a lot. So I saw them running and chasing each other, just like I might see you guys do for in-person recess. So yeah, a lot of the same types of activities. It's just the materials might look a little bit different. Levin?
When you said running and chasing, that was and they weren't in the Wampanoag outfits.
So at the beginning, you're right, they were not. It did show in the field right before their dad had them go and scare the birds that they were chasing each other. And he kind of said, come on, let's go. So he kind of wrapped up their playtime. So it didn't say they like to run and chase, but we saw them when they were inside of their Wampanoag outfits doing that activity. Good noticing though, and making sure we're staying on topic. I like that. You're monitoring our learning. Very good. Leah.
Are they still alive?
The Wampanoag tribe, yes, does have some people that are still alive. Now, the people from 400 years ago, no. But people that are from that bloodline and from that familial group, yes. Those girls in that video have Wampanoag tribe blood in their veins. So their ancestors have continued to have babies that continue to pass on that bloodline. So yes, Wampanoag tribes are still alive. There are many places inside of America where you can find what's called a concentration of a high population of a lot of people of one type of group. And there are lots of places around America where there are high concentrations or large groups of Native Americans. And that is one of them around a home site. Okay, let's pause on struggles for a moment. We're going to pause right here on struggles. And we're going to take a few minutes to look at Pilgrim life, okay? This is going to put us a few minutes over, but it's because I made that goofy mistake and had to start class quite a few minutes late. So I apologize, but I want to make sure that we set you up for success for your comparing and contrasting, okay? I will be posting this to all of you as an example. So if you did not finish, that's okay. It will be posted to Seesaw as a student sample for you to see. Right now, we're going to pause and we're going to do the same thing while thinking about pilgrims. Okay, so now we're going to look at pilgrims' clothing, pilgrims' chores, what pilgrims do for fun, and pilgrims' homes and how they looked. Okay, alrighty, so here's our information on pilgrim life.
This is to share your sound.
It's not shared still? Well, how strange. Thank you, William.
Pilgrim life. Hi, I'm Isaac Allerton. Here I am with my parents and my older sister, Sarah. We live in Plymouth. I heard you wanted to see what our lives are like. Come on, I'll show you. It's morning and the chickens are hungry. Let's head over to the hen house. If we're lucky, we might get some eggs. Come on out, chickens. All done. Mother says if we're going to sit, we might as well be helping the family by grinding corn. We pound the corn kernels into powder called cornmeal. We can use the cornmeal to make corn porridge.
Sarah!
Mother needs help with the laundry. She and Sarah wash it in the stream. Then they lay it out in the sun to dry.
Well done.
Laundry dried in the sun smells really fresh and clean, and it also feels a little crunchy. As the laundry dries, Mother and Sarah walk on over to the woods to pick some juicy berries. I hope they save some for me. Meanwhile, Father needs help getting water from the spring. We fill the buckets up. Father carries the water in a yoke. Don't spill any, Father. We pour the water into a barrel for the goats to drink. Later, we'll milk the goats and make the milk into cheese. Now, we all meet again in the garden. So many vegetables and herbs are ripe and ready to pick. It's great that everything's growing so well, because if we want to eat, we need a good garden. Here in the cornfield, all of our hard work is paying off.
You like that one? Pull that one off. Yep.
Look at all this corn. We all work together to harvest the crop. Our chores aren't done yet. Sarah and I gather pieces of wood for the fire. I might be annoying Sarah just a little by putting the wood into her apron kind of hard. I may get into trouble later. While I'm off in search of more wood, Sarah heads home. Mother is so happy that we brought in the wood because she needs it to cook. She uses it to make a fire. Woo! A crackling fire can make the house pretty hot, especially when it's warm out. But we love all the delicious food that she cooks. Here we are grinding corn again. Sometimes it feels like we are always grinding corn. Oh well, better that than not having any corn to grind. Mother says our chores are done for now and we can take a break. Playtime! First we play I Call. I throw the ball on the roof. Me! Then one of us has to call out the name of who's going to catch it next. What should we play next? Sarah loves 9-pin. You throw the ball and try to knock down the pins. Mother's finally done her chores too. She joins us and we all play Making Cheese. We're not really making cheese. It's just what we call spinning around and being silly. Well done. I'm so hungry. Good thing Mother made such a big dinner. Look, she made duck with cranberries and onions, quail with carrots, and porridge made with corn. We pick up most of the food with our hands. We have to wipe our hands a lot. The sun is setting. Mother braids Sarah's hair before bed. I'm already in bed because I'm exhausted. Sarah and I share a mattress on the floor. Sarah will sleep on her side of the bed after Mother's done. Our house may be small, but it's perfect for us.
Sleep well.
Pilgrim life.
We'll stop right there in the interest of time. I heard quite a few similarities, even inside of their food and the things that they found and created. I'm curious about what you noticed. Let's come back together. We're on slide 3. Let's take a look again at what they did for clothing. What did you notice about their clothing, about Native American, Pilgrim clothing? What did we notice? Levin.
They have leather clothing.
They did. There was some leather inside of there and fabric. So leather and cotton. So not so much of the animal skin. You know what? Their leather was kind of like hats and gloves, but their cotton was mainly what their clothing was made out of. So some fabric. Leather is an animal skin, but it wasn't animal skin that was just stripped and dried. It was processed in some way. Terrence, what'd you notice?
That their clothing was not brown. It was kind of like blue colored or yellow or green, orange.
Yeah, there were some bright colors inside of their clothing. So some of those fabrics were able to have dyes. So bright colors, there was some blue, there was some yellow. Yeah, versus the Wampanoag tribe, we traditionally saw just the tan of the animal skin. So there's some bright colors inside of their clothes. I noticed that their clothing seemed a lot more restrictive. So if you notice, the women's shirts were kind of fitting pretty tight around their arms. And that's because they weren't really expected to go out and do a lot of high climbing and motioning and moving like the Wampanoag tribe was. I noticed that the gentlemen also had a little bit more of protection on. Their clothing covered up their skin. And that's most likely due to the fact that they had much lighter skin than our Native American tribe that we studied. So they had to protect themselves from the sun. So clothing covered more skin and was tighter. So it wasn't as functional as what we saw in the Wampanoag tribe, where they were able to move more freely inside of their clothing. They definitely had to kind of stretch a little bit if they wanted to reach something. Their dresses, you saw when they were spinning and playing, the ladies had to hold those up a little bit so they didn't trip and get them in the way. So they weren't as functional. Terrence?
They still have to chop up corn.
They did. They had to do that. Yeah, we'll get that in the chores for sure. Leah?
Are Pilgrim people still alive?
So again, kind of the same as what it was with our Wampanoag tribe, the bloodline and some family. Now, Pilgrim wasn't like a race or a bloodline. It was what we described Europeans as. But there are still Europeans alive today for sure. They're all over Europe. And a lot of people inside of America also have original blood, probably to some Pilgrims, because they were here and they had babies, and then those babies had babies and kept going. So yeah, we can still trace the ancestors to these people in different generations, but we don't see a lot of people choosing to live in the style that Pilgrims lived. There are some groups that do so for religious reasons, but we don't see a lot of Pilgrim life just for the sake of being a Pilgrim. Okay. So chores, Terrence kind of jumped the gun a little bit on us and shared with us about the chores. And we did. We saw that they had to grind corn. The Wampanoag ground corn, the Pilgrims were grinding corn. So grinding corn for meals, they had to prepare their food. Again, not really a pantry to go to. There's not a refrigerator where you can go grab a snack. If you wanted food, you had to find it or prepare it. William?
That's a similarity.
What was the similarity? You chopped up a bit.
That on the last slide.
What was the similarity?
That they both grind corn.
They did, yeah. So when you get to the similarities, you're right. That can go in that middle. They both did have to do that. Great. Levin, more chores.
They pick berries.
Yep, they did some of that gathering berries. And what?
They fed goats.
They did. They had to take care of their animals as well. Fed the animals. I saw chickens and goats inside of there. Oscar.
They got water in these buckets.
They did, and our Wampanoag tribe also got water, but they got it inside of gourds. So both tribes did have to collect their water. There wasn't a water fountain. There wasn't a bottle they could grab. There wasn't a sink they could go turn on. They had to go collect their water from a river or a lake or another source like that. So they did. They had to collect water. There were more chores, definitely. If you want to add some in there, that is totally fine. Let's go ahead and move on to their homes and what they did for fun. Okay. Homes. What did you notice about the Pilgrims' homes. What do we notice? Aiden G, what did you notice about their homes?
That they weren't built out of sticks or wood.
Yeah, so they still used trees, but it didn't look like bark. So they used a different material than sticks or some wood. Sorry, I'm having some feedback from some muting here. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. Yep. So yeah, they used a little bit of different materials. So more planks of wood were used. So it looked more like planks of wood than it did kind of smaller collections of wood put together. Definitely. So planks of wood. What else do we notice about their homes? Leah?
That's tiny.
What do you mean by tiny? Say a little bit more.
Like it's not huge like the Wampanoag's one.
Okay, so you think it was a little bit smaller than the Wampanoag tribe life? Yeah, I actually think I would agree with that. I saw their space looked a little bit smaller. You know what else I noticed? It was still one room. The kids' bed was right next to the adult bed. And then if you walked over here, there was the fire where they were cooking, and over here was the table. So it was still one room, and it was maybe smaller than the Wetu. Was it smaller than the Wetu? We might leave that as a question. So it was still one large room. There weren't a lot of sectioned off locations inside of these homes. Terrence.
They had a fire in their house.
They did. And you know what? I think, was there a fire inside of the Wetu as well?
Yeah, they said that.
Yeah, they did. So fire inside of the house, I think he said for warmth and cooking. So that's another similarity that we found as well. Great. All righty. What did these kiddos do for fun? What were some fun things that they chose to do with their time when they were done with their chores? What did we find? Lev Beeston 35?
They played 9-pin making cheese and I call.
Yeah, 9-pin. Your memory's pretty impressive there, kiddo. Making cheese, which was spinning. And I call. I call kind of reminds me of the recess favorite where you throw a football in the air and you call out an amount that it's going to be worth and people go chase it down to get that many points. Reminds me of that. Yeah. So we saw some games. Both the Wampanoag and the Pilgrim children made up some games. And it looks like they also made the materials for those games. That ball looked like it was probably made out of some fabric that had been tied together. The pins for 9-pin looked like they were some carved wood. So yeah, they had to make their own games and resources as well. Yep. As you continue typing, inside of the struggle box at the bottom of the Wampanoag and Pilgrim Life slides, I'd like for you to record information about the struggles that we found inside of the article from yesterday. You discussed these struggles with your groups and with us. What was hard for the Native Americans and what was hard for the Pilgrims in that first Thanksgiving time when they met up? What were some struggles that they had? So you're going to record those independently. If you need to look back at the article, remember it's right here on slide 1. You'll log in the same way by selecting that Google Classroom login. Okay? On slide 4, you are going to compare and contrast the clothing, the chores, the homes, their fun, and the struggles of the Wampanoag people and the Pilgrim people. Okay, you're going to look at what their struggles were. You're going to look at all of their cultural elements as well. Okay, so you will compare and contrast those independently. Remember, inside of the instructional slides are review on comparing and contrasting, in is also review on your article from yesterday that we looked at, so you can find those as well. Okay. All right, kiddos. That is going to be your task for the day.